doesn't make any sound loops for us.
All right, I have hit the go live button for Twitch, so we are officially on the internet. I do not see any moves yet on my end either, but everyone, welcome who have just now joining the stream. I've got up on my screen the standings. We've got Ryan Ambergy with 4 points out of 4 games, is guaranteed no worse than a tie for first, and can get clear first with a half a point or better this round. He will be taking on Arya, who is a half a point, and would like to get their first win of the event. And Tom Bromlich will be taking on David Luscombe. They are sitting at 1.5 points and 2 points each. And General Zod, the hero of the channel, is at 3 points out of 4 games. He will be taking on Chuck Unruh, who just had a very nice win in a Bingo Gamblet. I've got on the phone with me National Master Mark Halsey, and we're hoping that the audio will sound good. So please, in the chat, give us feedback if you can hear him or not. And Mark, you can go ahead and start talking.
Well, we're counting on Arya to hold Ryan back and allow Josh, General Zod, to surge forward and tie for first.
That would be a great result. I mean, obviously, just getting 4 out of 5 into this field would be a great result for General Zod. I mean, you're talking about going from 2158 to 2195 if the rating estimator was correct. And we're getting good feedback from chat. Zoomjaw says phone audio seems fairly decent, so it's the final round, and we might have found a workaround to some of our technological issues from earlier in the event.
Well, we don't dislike Ryan. We don't really want him to lose. We just, don't want him to go with 5 wins in a row and get a big head or anything.
Well, I have a theory, and this theory could be completely wrong, but I think that Ryan and Arya might have a Grandmaster type game in a very quick draw. With Ryan, a draw would clinch him first place, and Arya would probably like the rating points. Also, Ryan might have in the back of his head thinking about the Oklahoma City Thunder game, which will be going on shortly.
That's right.
You can clinch first, and you can go watch the Thunder game with a quick draw. That is...
We'll see.
But
now Tom gets to play black again on board 2, and David Luscombe is going to be looking for. David is always into a fight. He's not into playing a game of chess and just sort of doing it half-hearted. So it's going to be a good game.
I am pinning the Lee Chess information in the chat for all of y'all. It looks like we do have some moves, and it looks like that the General Zod's game is a little bit bugged right now because it says that Chuck has already beaten Josh, and I feel like that result definitely has not happened yet. Figured that game would take a little bit longer. Now, I'm moving first on to the Arya versus Ryan Amberkey game, and we have Ryan open up with e4, and we see the Karo Khan from Arya, which is what we have seen earlier in this event, and an early h4 from Ryan, h5. This is all pretty thematic, so no surprises yet in that game. What is Zod's name? Chat. Zod's name is Joshua Alexander, and at the moment, I'm not sure his DGT board is accurate because it says he has lost.
I'm not seeing any moves. I do see some moves in Amberdy's game with Arya.
Yes, we just had that on our screen on the Twitch stream, and Next, I'm going to look at the Luscombe Bromwich game, which is now just getting on our way. We have Tom coming out with the Sicilian. And, of course, David's going to want to be somewhat combative here. And should be a good game. We saw Tom's approach against Ryan, and he took a somewhat combative approach in that game and came up a little bit short. And David's going to want to bounce back from the tough game that he just had against General Zod.
David's knight c3 on the third move is kind of a tricky opening if he's trying to avoid, say, the Najdorf, and Tom plays d6, then he might switch to a closed Sicilian and play g3 and d3. But on the other hand, if Tom does something like g6, Tom played e6. So now we're going to see whether David wants to play an open Sicilian with pawn d4 or something else.
Yeah, a lot of options. White can play pretty much anything here. And I think that I feel like he's going to want to keep it open. But we did see a closed Sicilian with a lot of success earlier in this tournament. General Zod plays the closed Sicilian, and he played it very well. Fresh Prince Zod is 3-1. He has won 3 of his first 4 games. Currently in second place, and if he gets a half a point or more in the final round, he will guarantee a minimum of second place.
Oh, good. I'm seeing some moves on Josh Alexander's board.
What I'm seeing is e4, d6 resigns, which I don't think is...
It's what's happened on the DGT side is Josh played e4, Charles played d6, knight c3, the closed Sicilian, and then pawn to g6, and Josh played pawn to g3. Chuck fianchettoed his bishop g7, and on move 4, David also played bishop g2, fianchettoing the bishop, and then pawn to c5, which transposes to the closed Sicilian from a Pierce, knight g to e2, knight c6, David castled on the 6th move, then rook to b8 was played, and General Zod played pawn to a4. He likes to play that pawn to a4 in the closed Sicilian, doesn't he? And then it was a6 as an answer, pawn to d3, and then Chuck played pawn to b5, traded pawns on b5, and now we're waiting for move 10 from Josh.
All right, I have this up in another window now for chat here. We have the e4, d6, everything that Mark just said, the early knight c3. We have Chuck coming in with the perk, which is something that I believe he played against Tom in round number 1. And Joshua Alexander is the general. That is correct, chat. Unfortunately, the board is bugged on Lead Chess, but the good news is on the DGT website, we can get the game, and I'm going through the moves here. It looks like
move on to f4.
Both sides are in theory here. This pawn to f4 is something that is very similar to what Chuck played in an earlier round, but Chuck was white instead of black, so he might be comfortable facing this type of opening. Granted, he played that against something that wasn't the perk, so it was a little bit different.
So if Chuck plays b4, what do you think Josh is going to do with that knight?
Yeah, do we have time to go to like d5 and maybe e3? I think e3 is a cool knight post. I figure with d5 it probably gets kicked by e6 eventually, but I think e3 is not a bad landing square. Well, we're going to find out.
Well, No, I was just wondering if you play knight d5, then black gets this d6 move in with tempo. Oh, he did that. He did that. I wondered if he was going to go to b1.
Yeah, I mean, you could go to b1, and then you'd go to d2, and you would eventually probably try to land on either b3 or c4.
Yeah, you can get to c4 the same number of moves if you go to d5 or you go to b1. Maybe it doesn't matter.
Well, if I'm not sure if we're super concerned about losing a tempo here to e6, because I feel like if you're moving the knight to b1 anyways, you're going to move it again to, well, really d2 is the only place it can go. So
it's gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean, what could have ended up happening is you could have played knight b1. Chuck could have ended up playing e6 anyways, and then you might have played knight to d2 anyways because you want to get that knight involved in the game.
Back in the early days of the closed Sicilian, black used to play knight c6. Knight to f6. You developed the king's knight on f6. But by the time Bobby Fischer became prominent, Bobby as black would always play e6 and then knight g7.
I tend to would side with Bobby Fischer's opinion on most chess-related things.
Most anything with chess.
Yeah. I'll stick with just chess with Bobby. But yeah, I mean, he's had a lot of opinions about the Sicilian. I know that in certain lines he just said it was easy. You just sack mate. And it was what I think he said that about the dragon. I want to say.
Yeah, that's right.
So
it's interesting that if you leave the f pawn unobstructed, sometimes you can stop white's pawn front by playing f5 as black.
Yeah, that would make me feel slightly uneasy because, I mean, we've moved all of our pawns on the queen side already. And we've moved, obviously the g pawn already. So the h and the f pawns are the only pawns we haven't moved. And if we move the f pawn, it's really hard to find good shelter for our king. That being said, at the moment, white doesn't appear to be threatening any sort of attack. Though we can't play f5 immediately because after e takes f5, the bishop on g2 is eyeing that knight on c6.
That's a good point. You need to play that knight e7 first, huh?
Yeah. Prepare that. Of course, it might make a lot more sense to do something like f5 after your castle anyways. We don't really need to rush for that break. I feel like that will be available whenever we want to play it.
Chuck doesn't waste too much time developing the knight to e7.
Neither.
I've got a question. Do you sack with f5, or do you play g4, or do you play pawn to c3?
For me, c3 would feel a lot more natural. Or, yeah. Well, actually, no. That long bishop is kind of annoying me as well.
Spassky used to like to put his a1 rook on b1 and push pawn to b3, and there's really not a lot black can do to open up the queen side, and then he just keeps going on the king side.
That is an idea. You can do rook b1, b3.
Oh, look at the general.
I mean, the crazy thing, if you look at both of these players, we're 13 minutes into the game, and the general has an hour and 32 minutes on his clock. Chuck has an hour and 29 minutes. So neither side has really used much time at all. They're basically playing on increment.
They're blitzing out these moves. I'm really surprised that. Well, he's comfortable with, familiar with this closed Sicilian. So I mean, he knows what he's doing.
Ugor mentions in the chat most closed Sicilian players play f4, f5 without even thinking. Fair enough. We don't care about the pawn. We just know we're gonna play it anyways. And we have a question on the commentators. Who are the commentators? I am Miles Melvin, a lowly 19-ish hundred player who has been given a microphone and an opportunity to temporarily take over General Zod's chess channel as he participates in this tournament. And on the phone with me is National Master Mark Halsey, who was originally invited to this tournament but made positive life decisions and wanted to please the wife and go on vacation more than wanted to play in this chess tournament.
Miles is a good player. I know because I played him, and it was not easy to win. I got lucky.
I will say that's a generous interpretation of the game because it felt like an anaconda was kind of slowly taking control of that game, if I remember that one correctly. Yeah.
Was that a King's Indian?
I think so. I think I tried to play a Binko or something against you, and then you didn't let me. That was in the state championship last year in round number 4. We both had 2 points out of 3 entering that round, so that win gave you an opportunity to play for a share of what ended up being first place. But if memory serves me correctly, that last round was unfortunate for you.
My talented opponent found a kind of a steady draw. He was down a pawn on the queen side, but he sacrificed his bishop, and all I had left was the wrong color bishop. Well, anyway, so, I'm guessing Chuck is going to play e-pawn takes at f5 here.
Yeah, I don't think you can't just ignore that pawn, because if you ignore it, we can play f6, forking the bishop and the knight and winning the game pretty much immediately. So you've pretty much got to commit one way or the other. Either g takes or e takes. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the other games. I'm going over to the Ryan versus Arya game and seeing, it looks like we left off at h4, h5. We see c4. They are kind of in theory, in terms of the Caro we've seen. This is the third Caro we've seen from Arya. He's played it in all 3 of his games with black. And we're going to see what type of resistance Ryan puts up against this opening.
Didn't Ryan just play this line as black?
Let me see
last
here.
Round?
It looks familiar. I don't know if it was Ryan, though.
Didn't the Bronlick Ambergy game, wasn't that an advanced Caro-Kann?
It was very similar. The difference was Tom played bishop d3 early, and we had the exchange, and Tom played b4. But it was a Caro with the h4, h5 idea in it. But after that, Tom played it significantly different than the way Ryan is currently playing it. Zod has not lost round 5 yet. They are still in the opening phase. The Lichess result is a bug, saying that actually, interestingly, each Lichess has the correct position in the game. But originally it said e4, d6 resigns, and that's someone who really doesn't want to face the perk. But Josh isn't that afraid.
So Arya has put his knight on g6, and that's kind of interesting. You don't see that often in the Caro-Kann.
It's an interesting idea, as I personally don't play this line. I can see that it looks like Arya's threatening to win a pawn, but it also intuitively feels like a pawn that might not be worth winning.
Yeah, because then your own h-pawn on h5 is kind of hard to protect, and if you do play g6, well, you have to do something with your knight, and your bishop on f5 looks maybe a little unhappy.
I'm unsure if we want to open up Ryan's rook there. Though it's interesting, I'm looking at the position right now, And it says the number one engine move is knight takes h4, but that's plus 1.1 for Ryan already. So the engine is just in love with what Ryan's cooking.
Yeah, I'm afraid this knight g6 kind of looks good, but sort of from just a the standpoint of just saying, well, I'm going to attack an h pawn, but it's not a standard maneuver. And when he took the h pawn,
I wonder if we're somewhat worried from Arya's standpoint about that bishop on f5 getting attacked by that knight. But it's okay. We see knight takes h4 and queen d3 blitzed out by Ryan. I wonder if this is some type of, I don't know if opening trap is the correct word for
yeah,
it.
I think it may be, because usually when white plays queen b3, the answer for black is queen to b6, but the queen's busy protecting the knight on h4.
That is correct. The queen is a little bit overloaded, and you really don't want to play b6. And you don't want to lose the pawn either. So, Watwell, it looks like the engine just wants to do, knight d7 or bishop e7, giving up the pawn.
Wow.
But, I mean, he did just take a pawn on h4 too.
So I see what you were saying about the bishop on f5. If white plays c takes on d5, then it's hard to take with the e pawn, because rook takes knight and knight takes bishop wins material. And so if you take with the c pawn, then you have to worry about this bishop on f1 coming in with check. All of this could get pretty messy for black.
Yeah, this is starting to look like really good opening preparation from Ryan, who is, as chat mentioned, Ryan is very familiar with the Caro because he plays it himself, so
right.
He knows what to avoid and what should be played, and probably some of the traps. He might know that, maybe knight g6, knight h4 sounds like a good idea because, hey, we're grabbing a pawn, but he might know that that's not a pawn that you should be grabbing.
Yeah.
All right.
How do you get out of this?
I'm going to let Arya figure that out and see what's happening with Tom and David here.
So the problem here is that when white plays c takes d5, black takes back with the c pawn, there's going to be a check on b5. Maybe the knight comes in the way d7, but then bishop takes d7 check, and now either your king is going to...
You have to take with the king, because you can't lose the knight.
Right. So chances are you just can't play knight d7. But, how do you defend your b pawn?
I can turn off the engine eval jab chess. We'll do that for a little bit. All right, so let's take a look at the Tom versus David game. We have an e4, c5 type of Sicilian, knight c3, e6. We see the e5 and the knight e4 here, f5.
That's strange.
f5 is interesting.
That's a book, yeah, that's a book line. At least in the open Sicilian, it's a book line. In the con variation.
I mean, both of them are pretty early in the opening. Both have used a pretty decent amount of time considering we're only on move 6. That game's on move 6, and if we take a look at the Chuck versus General Zod game, it won't let me flip over to it. Weird.
So what happened...
They're on move 14.
On the DGT side, last time we saw this game, the general had just pushed f5. Chuck played e takes at f5. And interestingly, Josh played e takes at f5. Now, in a kind of standard Grand Prix attack, white just leaves that pawn on e4 and leaves the tension with the pawn on f5, because if black ever plays f5 takes e4, then you just take back with your d3 pawn. You still have the e4 pawn, and you have better control of d5, plus some pressure on d6 with the queen. So it's a little interesting to me that he, I haven't played this position with the closed Sicilian, but I have played this similar situation with the Grand Prix attack.
I was wondering if before he played knight f4, if we could have gotten away with knight f5 tactically, because if bishop takes f5, you could do bishop takes c6, and the knight's overloaded, protecting the bishop and guarding the knight. Though I'm not sure if that trade is if that sequence of trades is even positive, but it was a potential tactical idea. Let's see here.
There's just a weak h5 square. Where is Chuck going to put his king?
I was wondering if we could do this, and after this, have this check here.
And I can't see your board. I'm not looking at the Twitch.
Oh, okay. Well, that was... Anyways, Josh didn't play this. He played knight f4. But I was saying, instead of knight f4, could he get away with knight f5? And then the point is after bishop f5, bishop takes c6. You either have to play king to f8, or if you play knight to c6, we can play rook takes f5. And, I mean, material's equal, but I feel like maybe we can get the queen to f1 and try to get an attack going. Take a peek at the engine. The engine says I'm terrible, but it says it's minus 0.2, so this is fair. The engine likes what the general did. It's about the same. It says that the position's equal either way. Just a different way of playing.
So Josh has put his knight on f4, and he's got really good control of both h5 and d5. So, if I were black, I would not be comfortable even being a pawn up.
Well, the one awkward thing for black is, what do you do with your king? I mean, you can castle, but you've got no g-pawn, and that could pose some problems even in the short term. I mean, if you castle, as you mentioned, knight h5, you could probably play that immediately and start asking some questions on the king side.
Wow. White's pieces look so happy. He's got potentially knight to c4, knight to h5, and then this bishop on c1 could come to g5. I mean, this is just looking like a lot of pressure.
Yeah, and we've seen a close Sicilian, even though this isn't a close Sicilian, this has a close Sicilian type of feel to the way the position turned out. I mean, I guess we had a c5 played on move 4 instead of, move 1. But d6, g6, and c5. Yeah.
To the Sicilian frequently.
So I think that we're probably into like a close Sicilian by transposition type of position.
Yeah. And Chuck Unruh plays the close Sicilian as white, so he's not unfamiliar.
Yeah, that's always a factor. I actually enjoy facing openings that I play with on the opposite color, because I'm generally familiar with the ideas and can defend those a little bit better than openings I'm less familiar with.
I wonder if Chuck is going to play Bishop E6.
Yeah, I was curious if you want the bishop on E6 or do you want it on maybe B7 and try to trade it off for the light square bishop. Maybe bishop B7 and then knight E5, because I'm a little bit annoyed by the bishop hitting my C6 knight and potentially having some overload problems, because you can't really move your knight on E7 right now either.
I was kind of wondering if Chuck plays bishop E6, then his king might decide to take a run for the queen side with king D7 and king C7.
That
try to hide out.
That feels somewhat daring because, I mean, we already have the A file open up with the A rook over there, so it doesn't feel like safety is in the queen side. But I'm also wondering, do you ever just play something like rook G8 and just say, I'm not going to castle this game? Yeah, say I've got to open
E file is open.
G file and then try to.
Just going to put heavy pieces on that E file.
Yeah, that's unpleasant as well. Between the G file, the E file, and the A file, it just doesn't feel like there's very many safe spots for Black's king.
My guess is that all of the fans of General Zod have been looking at games going this way for a while and are probably back there saying, come on, guys, this is like, he does this all the time. What do you expect?
For those in chat who are wondering who General Zod is, he is Joshua Alexander. He is playing in a live, over-the-board tournament in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the Rozsa Invitational. It is a 5-round round robin of 6 of the top players in Oklahoma who got an invite to play this. And General Zod currently has a pretty good tournament going. He's got 3 points out of 4 games. And with a win here, can guarantee no worse than second place and would get very close to the National Master title with a win as well. All right, I am going to take a look at this Ryan Ambergy game because it looks like there has been some action since we last were here. I think we had queen b3, d takes c4, queen takes b7. We're hitting the rook, knight to d7, and a bishop to g5. And wow, that is a tactical shot from Ryan. Immediately out of the opening, we are hitting the bishop. If you play queen takes bishop, we play queen takes rook with check. And you can't even block the check with your queen because then the exchange of queens loses the knight. So you have to play king to e7. And it feels like Arya's already in a position that might already be lost.
I think he's losing a piece because if bishop e7, bishop takes... Ryan plays bishop takes at e7, and then he can't take back with the king because then the knight at h4 would not be protected. But he can't take back with the queen because the rook on a8 is not defended. So it looks like the knight on h4 we were worried about is dropping off.
So there's a lot of positional problems here. I'm going to take a peek
I can talk Arya into playing the Sicilian defense now.
I took a peek at the engine and it said plus 3.3. Yeah, you just need to convince him. I mean, to be fair for Arya this tournament, I don't have great optimism on this result going his way. It's interesting.
Well, Ryan is such a strong player.
He is.
And I'm sure Arya's looked up to him for a long time. And losing this game is not by any means the end of the world for Arya.
No, this was always going to be a tough tournament, a tough field. He came in The second lowest rated, only behind Chuck Unruh, but Chuck has been higher rated and played in events like this in the past as well. So this is kind of a unique event for Arya because you don't have many games in Oklahoma or this region where you play 5 games in a row and you're guaranteed 5 games against people rated 2,000 plus. Generally,
do you know how old Arya is? Is he 10 years old?
I think he's 10 or 11. I'm not 100% sure which. I've heard both from chat. So it is.
At his age, this is already quite an accomplishment to get an expert rating and play in the Rozsa tournament.
Chris has said that Arya is 11, and he's had quite the run. I believe he's gained like 400 points in a span of a few months. He had a tournament in the the tournament in Dallas on President's Day, I think Southwest Class tournament, where he played up a section. So he played up in the expert section as a person who was at the time Class B, and he played up in I don't remember the 100% the story. I know he played up one section. I think he was under 1800 and could have played in that section and played up in the section that was above that, and then ended up getting clear first and winning a good chunk of money in the process as well. So that was quite a nice result for him. But yeah, Arya's going to be in the tank trying to figure out this problem that Ryan has presented. But this looks like just great opening preparation from Ryan and really an opening trap that, the good news about this for Arya is, hopefully you learn from this and then you don't repeat these moves. And we see F6, which is quite the concession to make. I do actually kind of like F6 somewhat. Okay, we have some quick moves. E takes F6, G takes F6. The reason why I like F6 somewhat is because hypothetically, if Ryan took the knight immediately, you had G5. So we were trapping the bishop tactically there. But of course, Ryan is on his tactics and just takes it. And now he's got a free knight. There's no clear path into trapping that bishop on H4. And you're just down a piece here. It's going to be tough sledding for Arya.
Ryan is coasting.
All right, I am going to move over to the Bromwich-Luscombe game here. We have, I think, a few moves played since we last were here. I think, we just had F5, E takes F6, Knight takes F6, and I think new moves for us, Knight takes F6, Queen takes F6, D4, C takes, Queen takes, and Knight to C6. So we have a lot of pieces coming off the board already. If David is content with the draw, he might just play Queen takes F6, and then...
Oh, no, I don't think that's necessarily a draw. The thing about the Sicilian is that you get this compact mass of pawns in the center, and they just start marching up the board, and lots of old games by Bent Larson just showing him winning those end games.
So where do you think...
I think Tom knows all about that. Tom is happy to go into that end game.
Where do you think that David should put his queen, though? It's like A4 square, or should we go back to, D1, or...
That's a good question. I think probably... Well, so sometimes, he plays Queen A4. It's kind of standard in these positions for white to push pawn to C3. And then the bishops can be more active. You can castle kingside, and you can get some. I mean, white's got a reasonable position. So Queen A4 is not. The queen's not going to stay there. It's not really posted there, but I expect later we'll see that queen go to C2, but we'll find out.
Jab chess. The speaker we can't see is National Master Mark Halsey. I have him on speakerphone right now. We had some. We tried to have him on for rounds 3 and 4 unsuccessfully, and we had him on partially in round 2, which was somewhat successful. He was giving a lecture at Norman at the time. But the idea of Queen A4 and then C3 reminds me a lot of kind of Scandinavian type of setups, where that's kind of normal, where you would have your queen on the side of the board and play C6 to give your queen a potential escape square if it gets chased away.
Good point. I'm thinking Tom's going to play Bishop C5.
Yeah, Bishop C5. That's a logical move. Develop the bishop. Make it so castling is a legal move. We still have the problem from Tom's perspective of the light square bishop. Maybe at some point we can try to play B6 and Bishop B7.
Exactly.
But not immediately.
Bishop on B7 would be perfect, and the pawn on B6 would help shore up the bishop on C5, and those two bishops will look right at the king's side.
Will David want to even castle short, though? Because to me, this feels like a position... Whenever I have the open D file, I like to castle long, because when I castle long, my rook from A1 is immediately on an open file. And,
that's true.
I feel like this might be a position that, especially stylistically, if Tom's going to castle kingside, which I feel like he definitely is, then you can castle queenside. You can launch your pawns at Tom, and then Tom can launch an attack at David, and we can see who gets there first.
Might be an exciting game.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the type of game that David wants to play. Try to get a 2-result game where neither of those results are draws, and see where we can go from there. All right, here we have, looks like some moves in this game here. After G takes F5, we have Knight F4 played. We saw that. Knight D4 played by Chuck, getting his knight centered into the board, though it's interesting. It's a very nice looking square for the knight, but it's also not really threatening anything. It does get off of the pressure from that bishop from G2, though. Knight H5, asking the question to the dark square bishop. Bishop E5 is the only square it could go to avoid getting traded off. And Knight C4, Josh is saying that you must give up the dark square bishop now. And it's never exciting when you do a G6 bishop G7 type of setup and you have to give up that dark square bishop, because if you ever castle long, then those dark squares in front of the king end up being very problematic.
I got a question for you. If Josh, the general, plays bishop to H6 and then puts his rook on A7, isn't he threatening pawn to C3, kicking that knight on D4 away from this C6 checking square? And then the king doesn't have anywhere to go.
So let's see here. All right, I'll waste a couple of moves. This obviously won't be happening, but if we were to get to a position like this, then we're getting cut off here. The knight is threatening to come into F6, so you have to be careful if you're a player like Chuck, because after the bishop gets taken, knight F6 is being threatened, and you can't take the rook because the knight F6 would come in and be mate. The only good news for Chuck is black does get moves and can potentially stop that. But yeah, you gotta worry about getting yourself in a difficult situation. And knight g6 is on the board from Chuck. So Josh doesn't have to actually commit to playing knight takes bishop here because, quite frankly, that bishop is going nowhere. And if you play knight takes bishop, then knight takes knight probably is going to happen. And a knight on e5 and d4 feels like an interesting idea for Chuck. Those are not aesthetically bad looking knights.
Yeah, I think that bishop on e5 doesn't have anywhere to go, and the general is not in any hurry to make it go anywhere. He's just going to continue to build pressure and put his pieces in better positions. And man, I just don't know what Chuck is going to do. You know, bishop h6 keeps him from castling, and rook to a7 will keep him from running to the queen side. So on bishop h6, probably bishop to e6 would be the answer. It doesn't really help to ever play bishop on e6 to take c4. That doesn't help anything because the light squares are just dominated by that g2 bishop. I don't know. Chuck just does. It's like he pushed those queenside pawns before he had his king tucked away, and General Zod may remind him why Paul Morphy told everybody to develop their pieces and castle quickly.
Yeah, I think this is a game where Chuck has the opportunity to still develop his pieces, but he is probably not going to have the opportunity to castle this game.
What does he do here? Bishop to b7? Is that a thought?
Yeah, if you can get in bishop to b7 before any rook a7 ideas happen, I think that would be good. Because
I think if I were Josh, I would want to play after bishop to b7. I would want to play queen to d2 and take back on g2 with my queen. And then I'm still threatening to kick that knight out of d4 and just play queen to c6, check, game over. I mean, all of his pieces look so good. He may talk me into abandoning the open Sicilian for the closed Sicilian.
Well, there you go. We might have some opening tech coming in the future for Mark and a couple of whatever your next tournament's going to be.
The general is getting a new fan.
Well, he's got a pretty good fan base here. We've had a good crowd on these streams, which has been very appreciated. I know as a former Twitch streamer myself, the work that it takes to develop a community like this, so it's great to see that. All right, we're going to go ahead back to the Ryan and Arya game to see if Arya was able to cause some confusion here in a very difficult position. Let's see, rook b8, queen takes c6, might as well gobble another pawn, why not?
Oh, yeah, bishop takes c4. Oh.
The b3. I don't understand this. Is Ryan offering up his queen, or what
game are you on?
I'm on the Arya Ryan game.
Did you say b3?
So I see rook b6 played, threatening the queen on c6, and then I see b3 played.
Oh,
but the queen is hanging.
15, he played pawn to b3. Oh, interesting.
But I don't understand this. This feels like a DGT error.
Yeah, I was gonna say that probably isn't. That's just not gonna be it.
Then we see rook b3. which makes no sense. And then knight f5. Yeah, the moves we're seeing come in don't make too much sense.
It's as though queen a4 were played and it didn't get picked up.
Let's see, rook b6, queen a4, and then...
Oh. Did queen a4 get played instead of pawn to b3 on move 15?
That would make sense. And then maybe we would have rook takes b2 be played there, which would make sense.
Yeah, that would have a similar position and make sense.
And then knight takes f5 would also make sense. Pawn takes. And
the chess mysteries of Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, I think regardless, I feel like the position we had after bishop g5 was correct. And against Ryan, after bishop g5, the position is almost borderline resignable on move 11. Because he's just going to end up being down a full knight and not really have any compensation for it. All right. What have David and Tom been up to? We see a same side, or not same side, a castles by Tom, a check from David, a check from Tom, which was met with king to d1.
That's wild.
So we will not see any castling from David. What I'm surprised by is after bishop b4 check. Oh wait, so the idea is you can't play c3 because bishop takes c3, pawn takes c3, right. Queen takes c3, and the rook on a1 hangs at the end on that check.
Yeah.
So.
But you could play knight to d2.
Or bishop to d2.
Would you give up the bishop?
Well, I guess you can't play bishop d2 because queen b2 hangs.
Yeah, but nevertheless, it's kind of a concession that those are two active bishops on an open board. That would be compensation. I don't know about this position without being able to castle. That's going to be. I guess he's castling on the queen side by hand, but his pieces have lost their harmony.
Bishop b4 was a nice find by Tom. It's a kind of a quiet in-between move that really messes up David's position here. And bishop to d3, so he is offering up his pawn on f2 if Tom would like to take it. Does he have time to take that without getting into trouble?
I think if he's a computer, he'd take it. But, if I were black, I don't know if I'd want to give up the initiative for a pawn. I'd just probably play d5.
Yeah, I mean,
those pawns coming.
The scary thing is, you could have, obviously rook f1 to kick the bishop, and then the knight can maybe move to, I don't know, g5, and we're hitting h7, and we're hitting the queen on f6, so the sample line would be something like, I don't know, the bishop moves back, knight to g5, and this can get a little bit difficult here.
I think Tom's going to play pawn d5.
Yeah, d5 makes some sense. We could try b6, bishop b7 ideas as well still. Or d5 with the idea of playing e5 and playing in the center.
Yeah, d5 and e5 pawns looks pretty mean. If Tom plays pawn to d5, White could play queen to h4, which threatens the h7 pawn and offers the trade of queens. But then the F pawn, you go into that end game. That F pawn, rook takes F2. Boy, that's just not going to work. That's just not good for white.
Yeah, if we trade that and the rook comes immediately to the second rank, and you're already on the G2 pawn.
Cute but no cigar.
That could cause some problems. And with queens off the board, you don't want to go down a pawn with queens off the board because it's really hard to justify any sort of compensation the less pieces you have on the board.
You're really struggling. And then if Tom plays pawn to d5, white doesn't have queen to e4. You'd like to force a weakness like g6 and then put your bishop on h6, but that's not going to happen.
Can get this bishop on c1. I would like to get in the game eventually as well. It's hard to find a square for it. You can't go to f4, which would have been a fun square, but the f file is not great. g5 might be an idea. Kick the queen. Maybe gain a tempo here.
So I figure pawn to d5, bishop to g5, queen drops back to f7. What's happening after that? King to c2, trying to get the queen's rook out.
Might play rook e1 immediately to try to stop at e5. Because if you don't play rook e1 immediately, we can just play e5. Though the one bad thing about rook e1 is you can play bishop takes f2, and we're hitting the rook, so that forces rook e2. Now, I think we can get away with moving the bishop.
But honestly, you ever read Nimzovich's My System? It's an old book. A lot of people don't, they say, oh, that's too old. Don't read anything that old. But, Nimzovich made some really great practical points in his My System books. And one of them was taking the time to take a pawn when the pawn is not really central to the strategic struggle. You're just wasting time. Just don't even go there. So I'm thinking that d5 followed by bishop g5, queen f7, and then if rook e1, maybe just bishop to d6, so you can force e5, and that's really strong for, positionally speaking, the center just gets owned by black.
So yeah, if we can get down d5, rook e1, we can maybe even consider a rook e8 type of move to try to prepare e5. And
so let's see, if 13th move, if d5, then bishop g5, queen to f7, then queen could go to h4, hitting on f7, h7, and probably it's a question of whether you want to play h6 or just play g6.
Yeah, all right. We've got some people in chat who I think want to see what is going on with the general. General is Joshua Alexander playing in a live over-the-board event. And he has the white pieces here against Chuck Unruh. And he has a very nice looking position here. Mark mentioned already that he liked the rook a7 idea. And yeah, this is a very difficult position for Chuck.
Look at the strategy. I can see why everybody's wanting to join the General Zod channel, because he's got these great strategies.
I mean, this is already getting to be a pretty ridiculously hard problem to solve. I mean, I'm looking at this position from a threat standpoint. We're threatening c3, and after pawn takes, where does the knight go? And if the knight moves to like e6 or something, we've got bishop to c6, and
game over.
Yeah, that just is instantly game over. Of course, Chuck plays bishop to
he's
d7.
Stopping that mean bishop c6 check. But let's see here.
I think we can play the same thing. C3 takes, and if we want at the end, we can play rook takes f5.
And then the bishop can't take on c3 because d6 gets taken by the knight. Check. That would be horrible. So, yeah, I mean, wow. Chuck doing a yeoman's work to try to defend against that light square bishop, but still has issues down this e file.
Even quiet moves. Rook e1 threatens checkmate.
Oh, yeah.
Well, not quite, but it's close. Because
it looks very good.
Yeah, knight d6
looks really strong, because then you've just got c3 and d4 coming.
This is going to be a hard problem for Chuck to solve. We do have our first game that went final. I'll do a quick run through here. I don't think that we even have all the right DGT moves, but I think we got the general sense of what happened in this game. It was Ryan versus Arya, Caro here, and this is just kind of an opening masterclass on probably why not to play knight g6 this early in the Caro, because grabbing that h-pawn feels like that was a fatal mistake here for Arya, and a beautiful bishop to g5 shot by Ryan, and after bishop to g5 there was just nothing. We see a couple of exchanges, a free knight here, and then after that I believe the DGT board did not work correctly, so we don't have the rest of the game reliably. But this feels like a very decisive game for Ryan, and big congratulations to Ryan, who went 5-0 in a very tough field, winning clear first in this year's Rozsa Cup. He will be the champion of the event, and well deserved.
And Arya has how many points?
He has 1/2 of a point. He got a draw against Tom, and a very exciting game that kind of went back and forth. And
congratulations to Arya for making it this far at such a young age.
Yeah.
And playing some really interesting games.
So that is that game. Ryan will officially be the champion of the Rozsa Cup, but a player who has the opportunity to finish second place is the general. As the chat asking, who is the general? General is Joshua Alexander. It feels like the chat knows him as the general, but his real life name is Joshua Alexander, and that's what we have shown here.
Do you know who won the first Rozsa tournament?
Not 100% sure who.
Tom Brondley.
There you go.
He held Ryan to a draw. And I held Ryan to a draw, and that was just a draw too many, a bridge too far. But after that, Ryan won every Rozsa tournament.
So
who knows? Maybe next year the general will have a new armamentarium.
Well, I mean, the general has been very strong this tournament in every game, except, unfortunately, the game against Ryan, where it was not meant to be. That was another masterpiece by Ryan. Ryan did have a couple of really hard fought games. His game last round against Tom was a really good game, and his game, I believe, in round number 2, I want to say, against Chuck was a very good game as well. But neither of those games were Tom or Chuck able to hold. Ryan was able to find a way to cause pressure and win the game.
You know, Ryan has Grandmaster coaching. I wonder if the General has Grandmaster coaching.
The General has a YouTube video talking about his origin story. And so I know for a fact that he actually has no coaching whatsoever.
So he's doing all of this on his own.
Yeah,
which is pretty impressive.
That is the case from the origin story on YouTube. Somebody in Twitch chat might go ahead and link that, but the Twitch told me about his origin story after the day 1 coverage, so I had to watch the YouTube video to find out the lore, since I'm was going to be guest hosting this on, over 3-4 hour type of streams. Definitely been using some books, no coaching. Yeah. I think he talked about in his video going to the library for some books, basically being a sponge for anything he could get his hands on. So, I mean,
wow.
But yeah,
just like Bobby Fischer. Bobby Fischer kept going to the bookstores and just absorbing anything he could read on chess.
The amazing thing about certain players like Fischer is they have memories that are kind of mind-boggling. Just all the small, minute details they can remember, and that's, I think, the part of what's amazing for the truly, truly top echelon of players. But yeah, he's done a great job. Obviously, Ryan, with his coaching and the work that he's been putting in, I know I've seen updates for him traveling pretty much all across the country, facing many GMs, many top players. I noticed he had a game against Fabiano Caruana. I believe that was last year, or it may have been this year. But he's played against some top-notch competition, and he is making a push to improve, get to IM, maybe GM, hopefully, and wish him the best and continue his upward trajectory of momentum. Chat is asking, what did Josh do in round number 4? Josh was victorious in round number 4, beating David Luscombe in a game that he played very well. All right, here. Speaking of David Luscombe and Tom Bromlich, they have what looks to be an interesting position. Could be dynamic long term. David being forced to make a king move, so he will not be able to castle this game, and has some potential long-term weaknesses. Maybe could potentially also lose the center, but does have a slight development edge, I think, because that light square bishop for Tom is going to be difficult to come out, while David can move that dark square bishop whenever he wants. Jab Chess has been clamoring for a Greek sacrifice coming. So hypothetically here, if we play e5, can we play bishop takes h7 is got to be the question. My gut instinct says no.
But yeah, one problem with that is that after bishop takes h7 check, there's no more light squared bishop. King takes, knight checks at g5, the king goes to g8. The rook comes over to h4, which has a one-move checkmate threat, but the queen can go to f5 or g6.
The queen, yeah.
And stop it.
Yeah, the queen on f6, able to go to g6 or h6, is relatively annoying. I
Well,
think that
Tom did not make my pawn to d5 move. Interesting. What is he doing? Bishop g5, and now what?
bishop g5 does scare me because the queen that poses the question to the queen, and the queen is currently guarding the knight.
Does not want to be disturbed.
So hypothetically, if we see this, uh,
I don't get it. Do you get it?
I, I, to me, this just loses a piece, but it's suspicious in how it loses a piece because, um, I don't think that this would be a move. Well, interesting. I turned the engine on, and it works tactically because if you play bishop to g5, we have knight takes d3, and if you take on f6, there's knight b2.
I get it. Yeah, so the bishop on c1 is gone, and you have knight takes b2 check. That's pretty tricky.
That is tricky. He's setting a trap for David if he's not careful. Because yeah, my first instinct and what I would probably play in a blitz game is just bishop g5. But if he plays that, he's just completely lost because knight takes d3 pretty much wins the game immediately.
Yeah.
And the thing is after, let's say, the queen moves, you can play knight takes f2, which is, check, and then you can move your own queen, so you're just up a bishop and a pawn, and that would just be game. So, very tricky move by Tom here.
So then, if bishop takes h7 check, king takes h7, now bishop to g5, is it different? I mean, black's up a piece, but he's going to have to move his queen.
Yeah, I actually like this idea by you because if you were hypothetically were to play knight d3 here, then the issue you run in is we've got queen h4 check.
Queen h4 check.
And then we can take the queen and be winning the game.
Yeah. And so then if bishop takes h7 check, king takes, bishop g5, queen to say f5, queen to h4 check, king goes back.
I'm wondering on bishop takes h7 if we can get away with king h8, or is that too smooth? No, never mind, because we still got bishop g5. That still works.
No, I think White's still trying to justify. I mean, I'm not sure that this bishop takes h7 does anything. Because once again, the bishop disappears, the queen has the f5 square available.
That is true. Queen f5 is a difference now too.
Yeah, it's probably no good.
But we had some people in the chat looking for the Greek sack, and this is maybe a slightly better version of the Greek sacrifice. Actually, you can almost play it because of bishop takes f7, h7, king takes, and then queen e4 almost works, but you've got knight g6, and I don't think.
No, probably not, because the f5 square is under black's control, so you can just break the pin anytime.
I think we're just too slow. I wanted to play h4 with the idea of h5.
Well, he just traded.
On h4, we can just play queen f5.
Yeah, so David just took knight takes e5.
That should avoid any of the potential major problems. Queen takes.
But then queen takes back on e5, queen to h4? Maybe?
Um, Slightly awkward. It might provoke an h6, which feels like a major concession. Um,
Yeah.
let's see. I just got a message from Mike Walters. I'll figure out what that is. Okay. Ryan and Arya's game is corrected. It is final. Ryan won. So we'll see here uh, what was incorrect. We had apparently an incorrect transmission at this game, but we see the same mistake. And really the game-winning move was bishop g5 the entire way. f6 exchange there, just a full piece up. Queen takes c6. Rook b2 was played as I think that you were suggesting, instead of all that nonsense about hanging with the queen, which did not seem very logical. Knight takes f5, bishop to b4, trying to generate some sort of counterplay, but queen takes e6, and rook h3. Ryan now plays bishop c4, threatening checkmate. And yeah, there's just way too many problems here for Arya, and Ryan delivers checkmate. A very quick win for Ryan, and congratulations to Ryan. He was in the chat, who has a perfect 5-0 record and is the 2026 Rozsa Cup champion. So congratulations on yet another great tournament and a dominating round 5 win. I have a feeling that this game was kind of a preparation win. I think that you knew the ideas behind knight g6 and knight takes h4 maybe not being the best idea, and you appeared to have certainly known how to punish it greatly with that nice bishop to g5 move. Do you have anything to add or subtract from that? Feels like a very good game.
No, Ryan knows the Caro-Kann very well. He played one of the favorite lines of Magnus Carlsen, that c4 move, and he clearly knows what he's doing. And he defended the Caro-Kann against General Zod, Josh Alexander, very well. I say he defended it. No, that was an Alekhine defense, and he had that theory down too. And then he did defend against Tom Bronlick, is what I was thinking. He defended the Caro-Kann, so he really knows the Caro-Kann theory very well. By the way, General Zod has just played a check in his game with Chuck Unruh.
Yeah, I know that you can't see Twitch chat, Mark, because we're just on the phone. But Ryan mentioned in the Twitch chat that says he didn't know knight g6, but he found the refutation over the board. So he clearly has a great feel for the position and understands, why you can't do certain things. Maybe knight g6, knight h4 was just a little bit too early in the game for that type of idea from Arya, and maybe needed to get his pieces more developed before hunting an h-pawn on the side of the board.
The Caro-Kann has a lot of theory to it. Arya is trying to reinvent that wheel. Ryan is not the person to invent the wheel over again against. Looks like...
yeah, Ryan, I agree with what Ryan just said in the chat. Not much to add after bishop g5. The game is pretty much over at that point. It's just a full piece. And yeah, just another dominating victory. He did have a couple of tough challenges this tournament with I thought really good games played by Tom Bromlich and Chuck Unruh against Ryan, but Ryan was able to find his way in both of those games. But let's go ahead and move over to the Joshua Alexander, the General Zod game, as I think Mark has been wanting to get over to that game a little bit here. I think we left off at like knight c4, knight g6, bishop h6, rook g8, and rook a7. I like the rook a7 cutting off the king. Bishop to d7, rook to e1. That was something that we were thinking about. Threatening knight takes d6, which is super problematic. Knight b5, guarding against said threat just mentioned, but knight to g7.
And the knight b5 is hitting the a7 rook, but the center is just not stable.
So chat, Josh Alexander is General Zod. He's got the white pieces in this game, and definitely feels good about it. I can tell you that in this position. So yeah, after knight g7, rook g7, kind of forced, and even after giving up the exchange, doesn't feel like Chuck is out of the woods here yet. And f6. Never play f6 is what Grandmaster Ben Feingold would say. I want to play queen h5 here and then take on h7 and then probably checkmate somehow. Is there a great way to stop that? I'm curious.
So what's the question?
If I'm General Zod, I just want to play queen h5 and then go checkmate him. Is there anything stopping me?
So you're going to give up that rook a7.
Can I get away with that tactically? I'm wondering
I was wondering if you could play queen to a1. And yeah, please take my rook so my queen can come in, and then my bishop can go to d5 and checkmate you on f7.
Yeah. I feel like this should work.
You played your move. Wow.
Yeah, who cares about a free rook? I mean,
who cares about a rook?
I mean, the thing is we can get knight to d6 in some lines, but queen takes, like, if you take on a7, we get, I think, queen takes h7 here, and we are just coming in.
Yeah.
This knight on g6 is hanging. Where does it go?
So Chuck's king is going to end up on e7.
Can he play king to e7 here? Give up the knight. Of course, now we're threatening f6 because the...
Yeah, that's right. So when king e7 comes, that bishop on e5 is not helping defend because it's pinned. So
I feel like maybe a bishop to e6 at some point.
So knight takes a7, queen takes h7. Knight on g6 is unhappy. Knight to f8. Then the queen can check on h5. The king comes up to e7. And right in here looks like we just need a little something.
The one thing I will say is Zod went from plus 3.7, and then he played my move, and the engine's like plus 1.4. So the engine still prefers him, but it says that this was less sound than just moving the rook.
Mm.
I feel like that Chuck doesn't have
play
many.
The exciting move,
I feel like Chuck doesn't have many other options but to take the rook and hold on because.
Yeah, he might as well.
I mean, from a practical standpoint, if you can't take the rook, you're just lost.
What are you doing?
Yeah. So you've just got to be like, all right, you've got a great attack on paper. Now let's see it.
You play Queen E7. That's what you're doing. So now two pieces are on pre. Two white pieces are on pre. But we would think Queen takes H7 is the way.
Yeah, Queen takes H7. I mean, we're threatening the knight with check. I mean, even if you take the rook in the corner. This is a fun line. So if you do knight takes Queen takes H7, we can do knight takes A7, Queen takes G6, King to E8, and then you've got rook takes E5.
The king is on E8. Where does it go? D8?
Oh yeah, it goes to D8, and then we've got rook takes E5, and whatever happens, bishop takes F6.
That works the queen. Yeah.
It wins the queen.
It works.
So.
God, this was such a pretty opening. Wow. But starting with that pawn F5 sack.
Queen H7 on the board. General Zod wasted no time here.
Yeah.
And this just feels like it's completely won and tactically, because I don't even think you can take the rook on A7 anymore. And if you can't take the rook on A7, then
knight F8. I think he's going to play knight F8. But then you have Queen H5 check.
Yeah. That seems to be a problem.
And king goes to D8.
So yeah, chat. General Zod is Joshua Alexander. He has the white pieces in round 5 of the Rozsa Invitational. He's got 3 points out of 4, looking to get his 4th win in 5 games, and that would put him very close to National Master. According to the internet, it looked like it would put him at 2195, which would be a one decent tournament away. It doesn't even need to be a great tournament, just a slightly positive tournament away from being master. This is definitely going to be a tough problem for Chuck to solve.
I think he's going to try knight F8.
Knight F8 on the board. And I think we'll see Queen H5 played. And that will...
Bishop takes knight, drops the queen. So he probably won't do that.
Yeah, the position is almost crazy enough where I'm like, can you get away with that? I don't think we're that crazy yet.
So if Queen G8, he's got Queen F7, but that just drops the bishop on D7 because you trade queens, take the knight on F8, and then the D7 bishop is no longer. So if Queen G8, Queen F7 is not going to do it. But you can take the rook, and then maybe bishop D5.
Yeah, I just don't think we need to give up the rook anymore. I think we just play queen h5, and then after king d8, we can play bishop to f8, I believe.
Takes f8.
Then
Queen takes f8, and then where's the killing move? I'm kind of wondering about queen g8 instead, and then knight takes rook, and then bishop to f3. Because then queen f7 gets pinned with bishop h5, and queen takes h5. It's queen takes f8 mate.
Yeah, queen h8, I think is the best. If you're going to sacrifice the rook, I think queen h8 is the way to do it because I like having the.
I'm thinking queen g8 might be better. I know what you're thinking though, because now if queen h8, then bishop takes on f6 is a threat.
Yes. That's where I'm trying to go. And then I don't think that Chuck has very many good moves after that. You can't play queen takes
H8,
because of queen takes
knight
queen.
Takes h7, bishop takes f6, queen f7. So then what? You have knight takes d6 check because the bishop is pinned. So queen f7 is not on. Once your knight at b5 doesn't defend on d6, then that queen is not going to go to f7. So if queen h8, knight takes rook, bishop takes f6. If only I could distract that queen. If queen f3 does bring that bishop in, and then if the king has to run to d8, you can always take on f8, and it's just an exchange.
I'm thinking that on queen h8, knight a7, bishop f6, and now you're posing the question to the queen, and there's no good squares for the queen. If the queen moves away, then we've got knight takes d6. So you can't play queen f7 because of knight d6, which wins the queen. You can't take the bishop with either piece because of either rook takes queen or queen takes queen. You can't move the king. I think the only thing you can play here is maybe queen to e6. But after knight takes bishop, I think it's just lost completely. Because you can't take back, and we're threatening knight f3, winning the queen.
Okay. I played queen h5 check, and we pointed out earlier that if the queen interposes queen f7, then you can trade queens, king takes back, bishop takes on f8, and that bishop on d7 is hanging, so you'd have to take the rook instead. That doesn't look like such a great deal. So queen f7, what's the answer?
I think queen f7 is the only real try here. Or he could actually couldn't he play king d8 here?
Maybe.
And yeah, I don't see the follow-up in terms of a complete knockout. I think we can always retreat the rook from a7 to somewhere else. Bring it back to like a5 or something and be completely fine. We can just play this position up an exchange and not try to get too fancy. Might have to play bishop takes f8 first, though, too.
So with queen f7, I think maybe queen to h8 or h6. And the idea is bishop f3 to h5 will pin the queen. But you don't want to lose the rook on a7.
Well, if he plays queen to f7, you can play queen h8 safely because the rook isn't hanging on a7 because of knight to d6, which wins the queen.
I'm sorry, queen to f7, and then what?
After queen f7, queen h8, our rook is not hanging on a7 because of knight takes d6.
Oh, because you got the check. Yeah, that's an excellent point. The knight on b5 has to defend d6. Well, he's done it. And now queen goes to h8. That kind of picks up a tempo, doesn't it? Because the queen will have to go back. Or maybe the king can move.
Well, if the king moves, then we can just eat the knight.
Oh, what's he doing? King takes queen. What's he doing here?
I think he's just trying to simplify. He says, I've got a winning position. I'm going to simplify and take this to a winning ending.
Bishop takes, now knight takes a7.
And then bishop takes d6, and that's still going to be a winning ending.
Really?
I mean, I think so.
There.
We do this. Bishop takes d6. Knight a7, bishop takes d6 here. Figure the... I guess bishop b2 might be pretty strong for black. Oh, no, never mind. That hangs.
That hangs. Rook e7 check. But you can check with bishop d4, make the king move, and then do something to save your bishop on d7.
Maybe bishop. Can we get away with bishop e6? No, wait. No, the rook hangs on b8. So we have to trade the bishop after bishop to d6.
You do? You can't just play rook to d8? I guess you can attack it.
After takes, knight takes. But well, this line...
all this just for a pawn?
Yeah, General Zod's just up a pawn. He does have a passed h-pawn, which could win him the game. This seems to be a lot harder than winning just the exchange up, though. I feel like he's making this more difficult than it needed to be. Oh, by the way, all of this is pretty much on the board, up to bishop d6.
Mm-hmm.
And
bishop d4 check, king moves, and then the rook moves to probably e8.
I'm worried about like bishop d5 ideas, but maybe that check doesn't do much.
Nah, it just goes to g6. Well, I mean, he's got a good pawn. I mean, that h-pawn is a hell of a pawn to have in an endgame. It keeps the black king honest so that he can't fight for the center, and that means you can get another passed pawn in the center.
Yeah, it's a two-result position.
Two passed pawns. So he probably looked at this and said, well, this endgame is not challenging. Sometimes you see an easily won endgame, and you just don't want to calculate a whole bunch of complicated stuff. You just go for the simple win.
I question how easy this ending is. I mean, you're up a pawn, you have a better pawn structure. Your opponent... I don't know. I feel like if Chuck can get that knight unraveled a little bit, he can get himself back into that game.
A7 is really unhappy.
I think it gets back into the game quickly though. It can go to b5 or c6 and then make its way to d4, maybe e5 potentially, long term. All right. Looks like that game is calming down. I think I would assume that a lot of action has happened between Tom and David since we last looked. All right, here we had knight to e5, which we saw was kind of deceivingly trappy. Knight e5, queen takes e5, f3 shoring up, making sure that f pawn doesn't fall. d5, we were expecting that from Tom earlier in this game. Queen to h4, threatening that h7 pawn, as you mentioned earlier. h6, guarding against the check threats. Rook to e1, which is basically a free developmental rook move, hitting the queen, and queen to f6, offering a queen trade. And we have a queen trade accepted. Queen takes f6, queen takes f6, and bishop to e3 on the board.
Well, this looks a lot better of a position than I thought David was going to end up with.
Yeah, I think that this could turn out very nicely for him. You've got that pawn on e6 can turn into somewhat of a liability. It is blocking in that light squared bishop. So trying to figure out something to do with that c8 bishop is something that Tom needs.
Yeah, this is just a standard French endgame. They said that to Korchnoi once. Victor, what are you going to do with that c8 bishop? And he just sort of sloughed it off with his hand and said, it will develop eventually.
Yeah, it needs to develop eventually because, it's also blocking in that rook on a8 as well. But I think that it doesn't take too long for those to get developed. And no immediate threats from David here. This one could be petering out into what might end up being a somewhat evenish ending. But I'm sure David will look for ways to complicate this, as will Tom. All right, back to Chuck taking on General Zod here. We saw the check and the rook e8 as you suggested. I wasn't sure if we wanted to get rooks off the board or not, but apparently.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he didn't have a good choice, but this has just got to be happy news for Josh.
Is it worth throwing in bishop d5 here? Might not do too much, but.
Oh, yeah, I don't know if that does anything for me or not.
I was thinking that if the king, depending on where the king moved when we traded, we would force the bishop to take back, and then you could possibly get in a bishop to e6 and try to win another pawn.
Well, one of the advantages of the king being where it is that when you move this bishop on d6, say b8, you get this knight d6 check. So if the knight goes back to b5, you can trade knights with knight d6 check, bishop takes. Oh, I see you're going to lose the b pawn. That wouldn't be so good. You need to do something about that b pawn first. So you probably want to get your king over to d2. Get your king to d2 and then try to trade knights.
Do we ever get away with just playing b3, or are we too worried about maybe the knight coming in from b5
b3,
to c3?
No, b3 sets you up for the ending where Capablanca pointed out that if you have a unit that holds two, the b4 pawn holding two pawns on b3 and c2, that's not very prosperous for the side with the extra pawn. So you don't want to play b3 unless you can somehow force pawn to c3. But I would think you would want to see if you could move your king to d2 and fight for that c3 square. But how's he going to do it? That's a good question.
c3 immediately.
Right away? Something's.
Oh yeah, this makes sense because c5 hangs if you take. If you do
Oh
takes,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
c5.
Okay, that's a perfect concept. He saw this much deeper than we were.
But what I'm a little bit worried about here is we're getting very low on the quantity of pawns. So if
Uh,
hypothetically Chuck was able to trade
nice.
off that last remaining, get to that D pawn, and then maybe he could sack
Yeah,
a
I
piece for
think
2 pawns.
it's still going to be two passed pawns, uh, widely apart, and that just means more the more pieces that are exchanged, the harder it is to draw. Because the king and pawn ending is just over, and then Chuck has the task of avoiding exchanging pieces.
This is this C3 line's pretty forcing. I think you pretty much have to take and then lose the pawn on C5.
Yeah, he took it.
Because if you don't do that, there's not really a square for your bishop.
True that. That's pretty. He saw that he could simplify that down to this end game.
And one thing here is after bishop to c5, the knight is getting attacked. It has to move, and you can play knight to d6, and
And then trade another set of pieces off. That's really
yep.
true. And that's just going to be wow, a two bishop ending. Two bishop versus two bishop. That's really interesting. But fundamentally, Josh has an H and a D pawn. They're both passed. The F pawns can do nothing, and this just looks so good.
Yeah,
There he goes.
I feel like this
He
should
didn't
be
lose
one.
any sleep over it, did he?
No, I mean, I think that when he played c3, he calculated this entire line out and
Yeah,
was just
he's got
pretty
it all
much committed
figured
to it.
out. Yeah, this is really hard to defend. Wow, well done.
He's got a passed H pawn and a passed D pawn, and it's going to be very hard to stop both. Could end up in a classic pants situation with the bishops.
Well, that's really interesting because it looks like Chuck, who knows the C3 Sicilian, and he's transposed into the Sicilian playing Peart's defense a lot. Nevertheless, just didn't seem to appreciate this pawn to F5 sack and the way that the tactics evolved from that.
Yeah, great position here for Josh as he tries to go to 4 points out of 5 and would get clear second in the Rozsa with a win here.
Do you play bishop c5 or do you play bishop f4 here? The advantage of a bishop on f4 is that those kingside pawns are not going to get taken. And your king can fight for the d4 square.
The only thing that worries me kind of about bishop f4 is maybe bishop to e5. And obviously we can't take because we're not going to want to undouble those pawns. And I also don't want to allow bishop takes bishop there either because I would prefer to keep my pawns where they're at, connected.
Well, the pawn on f4 will hold the two doubled f pawns. It can never be attacked by the remaining black bishop. And Chuck didn't go for that bishop e5. So I don't think that would necessarily be a difficult problem.
Yeah, I think what Chuck is doing here is pretty pragmatic. Bishop h5 is cutting off a lot of the squares the king can use to get activated into the game.
How do you get your king out of this back rank business?
Yeah, that's the difficult problem, and that's why I like about Bishop h5, is because I think before you were thinking about maybe king to e2, and then you could shield off with Bishop f3. But now, if you play king f2, for instance, we can play bishop to d4.
Well, then you play bishop to e3 and say, please trade bishops. And of course, Chuck would not do that. But then you still, I guess you can play bishop f3 after that, and then the e2 square is available for the king.
I'm wondering if we could get to some weird type of ending, though, if we're not careful from General Zod's perspective. If one set of bishops gets traded off, could one bishop blockade one side of the pawns and one king blockade the other? And you can never run them out of moves, hypothetically, in an ending like this, because bishops can move forever. So it's not like a king ending.
The only way to do that would be if both bishops were, all the bishops were looking at each other, and you traded one color and then the other color recaptured. That's not going to happen. So that means that there's no bishops of opposite color going to happen here. And that means that Josh's bishop can always fight for the same squares that Chuck's bishop is trying to defend. And he has these widely separated task pawns, and you just can't do both.
Jab chess, trying to hype up Chuck here, doesn't know why Zod went into this, saying Chuck knows endgames. And
I bet that's right.
I feel like Chuck knows endgames. I still think that there's drawing chances here. Obviously, only a 2-result game, but I think that there might be some drawing chances here. But maybe I just watched too much of the candidates.
Is going to happen here.
But the interesting thing is with the pawns on... I like king to e5. He's saying, if you trade...
No, you're not going to trade. No, you can't do that. But you're going to play bishop f3. And every trade just helps white. And if the bishop on h5 runs away from the trade, well, then it's pawn to h4, h5, h6, h7... What do you do?
Well, the general traded.
Hey, that's not how you do it. What is he doing?
And after king takes, he's forced to play bishop to f1.
What is he doing?
To save the pawn. Bishop f1, maybe bishop e2.
He's got bishop f3. Oh, beautiful. Okay. Oh, he didn't do that.
Yeah, he went with bishop f1, but he can play bishop e2 next move.
If bishop f3 would have been beautiful, because if you trade and take the d pawn, you lose the f pawns. It's just over. In fact, you don't even have to take the f pawn.
Well, so, he wouldn't trade. He would go like bishop to g6 or bishop to
right. He would move the bishop away, but then you have king to e2, then king to d2.
I'm still...
No, I guess you're right. Bishop goes to e2 and the king goes to f3 and then f4. So it really doesn't matter that you're going to play bishop e2 next move anyway, and it's the same strategy.
So I'm trying to imagine some type of fortress here, where if you got your bishop onto ace h7, I guess maybe you can get the bishop to g6 and make progress that way. Yeah.
No, if you put the bishop on h7, then white's bishop just goes to h3, gives you the d pawn, takes the f pawn, and then you don't have control of h7 anymore. No, it's hard to find a fortress. If bishop to, well, I don't know what Truck's going to do. Is he going to play bishop to g4 here? Then bishop e2, bishop h3. I just can't see any. I mean, even if he gets,
I think actually the king is guarding is blockading the wrong pawn. You want to figure out a way where if the thing is this is drawn if we can trade off one of the f pawns for the g pawn and then just have an h and a d. If we could get the king in front of the h, then the bishop can sacrifice itself for the d pawn. And
yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's just not gonna. That's not gonna happen. King f3, king f4. Yeah, and then that f5 pawn is a goner. And once that's gone, this black king is far away from that h pawn and cannot help stop the march. There's just, I think it's over. I think this is a really well played end game. The concept of the end game, instead of looking for all these, complicated tall sacrifices, he said, "Oh, look, this end game is just one. Why don't I do that?"
I still think we have a little bit of juice in this game. I can see what the engine says. It's a one ending. But I think that there is still a little bit here for Chuck to fight for. Maybe I'm an optimist for Chuck, but
I figured. So I think Chuck's going to play King E5.
Yeah, you can't allow King F4.
Then you lose the D4 square, so then you lose the F4 square after that. So I mean, what difference does it make? The king gets to F4, the bishop goes to E2 or H3, and then takes that F pawn, and it's just over.
I still want to find a way, if I'm Chuck, to, and this is most optimist, if I could trade off one of my F pawns for that G pawn.
Well, I suppose
I might be living in a fantasy world, but he is going to keep fighting until the very end here, I'm sure. But let's take a look at what Tom Bromwich and David Luscombe have been up to here. We had queens come off the board.
Oh my goodness, look at that D pawn. Blocking E5. What is Tom doing?
And here we go. Well, I kind of like this. You can play rook to E5 and rook to E1. Oh, this is from David's perspective that I like this, not from Tom's perspective.
No, I mean, David's stock has risen quite a bit in the course of the last 10 moves or so.
Yeah, I'm thinking I can play rook to E5, rook to E1, double there, and I guess maybe that doesn't accomplish anything immediately, but it feels like it should accomplish something long term. Or just planning that rook on E5 just seems pretty annoying, because then you're never playing pawn to E5. And trying to find something to do with that light square bishop may get difficult at some point in this game.
Well, I mean, this is a better position for white now. No, I mean, it's still defensible. It's just, certainly not as good as what it was.
Could also try a rook c1 to try to get the open c file. Because even if you oppose it with rook c8, you can exchange and then move the other rook to rook c1. And then it looks like that maybe we can try to break in that way. Another approach that David could consider.
Yeah, white's definitely better. He's just played CD4, so I think Tom will move the king closer to the queen, the center. King F7, king or F8. It's the same number of moves to get to D6 with your king, whether you go to F7 or F8.
I kind of like f8 more because I'm worried about trapping my own rook.
Yeah.
That being said, there's not really a way to threaten it, so maybe we shouldn't be too worried about that.
I get what you're saying. I mean, there's no theoretically great reason why the king needs to go to f7. Just go to f8.
Yeah, somebody in the chat gave the general 200 bits and said bishop to a6, control the c file. So
wow.
if you play bishop a6 first, then after that you can move a rook to c1. Though I wonder if bishop to a6 would get meat by bishop to c8. Because he would definitely love to trade off those bishops.
b5. Bishop would go to b5. And now the bishop is back on c8, not in its happy place.
I wonder if you could get away with a5 and then bishop a6, or maybe that's a little bit too slow.
So king f8, bishop a6, king e7.
Okay, rook f4 on the board.
What is Tom doing?
He is threatening this pawn on d4, saying that's weak. I want to go attack it. And
yeah, you're gonna play king e3. That's a forced move. And I'm guessing he's playing g5, Bobby Fischer's favorite move.
King e3 and g5 on the board. I do think that we can go g3 if we want to kick that. But g3 is committal because it does create some weaknesses to maybe attack.
Wow. Is he going to play rook c8 here?
Rook c1 on the board. Rook c8 is kind of the robotic move.
And then rook to c1 after the trade. And then that bishop on d7 is not happy. Oh, it can go to b7, and then the rook can come back to f8. I'm sorry, f7. All right, so he can just make it work. Rook to c8, rook takes rook, bishop takes rook, rook to c1, bishop to b7, rook to c7, and rook to f7. Just barely saving it.
I wonder how this ending would be, because you have kind of a bad bishop versus a good bishop. Is that enough to win? Stockfish says probably not.
If white has a more active king, say a king on e5, I'd say yes. And see, if you traded everything down and played f4 here,
the unfortunate thing
might be awful good.
Is I don't think that Tom is required to take because this is not checker, so he could probably just play king f6 and be like, you're just not getting your king to e5 because my king's on f6 right now. And he can maybe even play pawn to e5, and if he gets pawn to e5, then the game is just drawn. I feel.
It depends on who's got the blockade going. What Tom does not want to do is end up with Luscombe's G and H pawns against a lone H6 pawn, and then trade in the center and wait for White. White is just waiting for him to run to the king side to stop a passed pawn, and then he just gobbles up the D pawn and goes into the queen side. So it's not simple to, even if he gets pawn to e5 in, it's not simple to draw it.
Chat is asking, where is Zod? Zod is right here, and we have some moves in this game. It looks like the general has made some progress. After bishop e1, bishop to e8, king f3. For some reason, Chuck plays bishop to d7, allowing the king to come to f4. I would not have wanted to do that. I take back all those optimistic. I take back all those optimistic things I was saying about Chuck being able to draw this after allowing the king to go to f4.
Do you remember Monday Night Football and Dandy Don Meredith? When the score got too bad, he would start singing "The Party's Over."
Yeah, and the bad thing here for Chuck after bishop to h3 is you can't play king to d3 because after bishop takes f5, it forces the bishop trade, and that king and pawn ending is very easily won for.
It's just over, yeah.
For General Zod.
Excellent, just another pretty game by Josh Alexander.
He's just going to win this f5 pawn. He's going to launch that h pawn up the board, and there is really nothing. In fact, I've gotten confirmation from the tournament site that Chuck has resigned in this position. So
yeah,
that means
Chuck, good for you.
General Zod has finished with 4 points out of 5. And based on my pre-tournament rating calculations, I believe that will put him at 2195.
Wow.
Which means that his next chess tournament that he plays in, his next USCF rated chess tournament, he will be hunting for master and just needs a slightly good tournament to get there.
Yeah, he's got that feeling of momentum the way he's playing these games. He knows what he's doing, and he's just producing pretty games.
So congratulations to all the members in chat who have been pulling for General Zod. He had a really nice tournament. He had 4 games against people that were within 100 points of his rating, and he won all 4 of those games. That's really hard to do. And then he had the game against Ryan, which didn't go very well, but it's hard to have good games against Ryan. So you don't lose many rating points for losing to him. That's the bright side of that. So, yeah, that is a great tournament result for Josh and a well-deserved second place.
And Josh is younger, isn't he, than Ryan?
I believe Chris said earlier in one of the broadcasts that Ryan was 22 and Josh was 26. So Josh is 26? That's what I've heard.
Wow. He looks so young.
That is a good thing for now. I guess for the rest of his life that would be a good thing. Usually you look so young is not a compliment when you're below 21, and then when you're above 21, you think that is a compliment. So yeah, it just depends on your age.
Yeah, when you're retired, you look so young. Doesn't matter what age you are.
So it looks like we might be we're heading down this exact line in the Bromlich-Lovskum game that we were just talking about, with the bishop going to b7, the rook coming to c7, and the rook coming back to f7.
I think he's going to play f4. He might play h4. That'd be kind of interesting.
I like h4. Because if you get h4 in there, you're weakening a pair of set of pawns. That being said, David might be able to get away, or Tom might be able to get away with playing after taking, he might get away with playing h3, depending on where pieces are and whether or not you can stop that pawn from queening.
So you're saying that David would want to play what move now? This is move 29 coming up.
Yeah, I like your h4 idea.
H4?
That being said, I think
F4 looks thematic because you're going to trade that g5 pawn. I don't think pawn to g4 is going to work because of pawn to h3. But maybe I'm wrong. Ooh, that's interesting.
If on f4, can Tom ever just ignore it and play king f6? Okay, bishop b5 played on the board.
Yeah, I think if I can trade the f pawn for one of the king side pawns, then he's going to have a passer on the king side, an outside pass pawn. That's got to be good.
I feel like that David needs to play f4 now because he can't allow e5.
Oh, no, I think e5 is not that great. Except for the problem that you've got two G2 pawn and the F3 pawn. Yeah, you were right anyway. You don't want your two pawns on light squares with that bishop on B7 looking at them, ready to play D4 check and take one of them, you know. So this makes sense, F4.
Let's see here. We've got somebody in chat who mentioned instead of rook c7 here, could white have played bishop to g6? That cuts off the rook f7 idea. And then hypothetically, if you were to play like king to g7, you can check and get the bishop.
And a rook on the 7th. That's a very good
Well, then there's still got rook f7. Actually, no, wait. I think I did this line pretty badly. After king to g7, you could play bishop to... You could play bishop to h5. And then you would be threatening rook c7. So I do think that this...
But rook c7 check, king takes bishop, rook takes bishop. You're going to... that still looks really good.
So this line that I was analyzing on, that one of the Twitch chatters brought up with, was instead of 27 rook c7, you could have played, or David could have played bishop to g6, and that is completely winning because you're cutting off the f7 square and there's no way to stop rook c7.
Yeah, that's true.
So
you can just back the bishop up to... Well, let's see. After bishop g6, bishop to a6, rook to c7, bishop to f1.
Got king f2.
King f2, that's true. Then the bishop moves away and the d pawn is hanging.
That's true. Can we give up the... Can we just take on a7, give up the d pawn, and then maybe do like a rook b?
I'm thinking that after bishop to f1, white should just play g3. Oh, but then rook to f... No, wait.
No, yeah. I think you're right. After bishop f1, rook g3, and then the rook has to move, and it has to move backwards. So maybe rook f6, bishop h5.
Hard to defend those queenside pawns from the rook.
Yeah, it is. So I'm Papa Crow. Zod beat everybody in this tournament except for Ryan Ambergy. He lost round 3 against Ryan Ambergy, and Ryan Ambergy won all of his games. So Zod ended up finishing in second place with 4 out of 5, and Ryan finished in first with 5 out of 5. And right now, this match between Tom Bromwich and David Luscombe is deciding who will get in third place, I believe. Yes. So if Tom were to win, he would finish in third. And if David were to draw or win, he would finish in third.
I don't think Tom's going to win this.
Yeah, I feel like that this is heading towards a draw. I mean, if anyone has the better winning chances here, does David, though.
Yeah, that's right. And I don't know. I think that positional concept of bishop to g6 to h5 and just dominating that c file, that looks pretty good.
Saeed, who's in Twitch chat, go to Zod's game. Zod's game completed. He has emerged victorious. That game is over. So this is the Tom Bromwich David Luscombe game is the only other game remaining. It wouldn't surprise me if Zod came into Twitch chat and we can go over the game with him and get his thoughts. Sometimes that happens.
What happened? What's the improvement on his game with Ryan? You know, next time he plays Aljechen's defense and somebody does the Ryan variation, what does he have in mind?
I'll go ahead and show that on the board, his game 3. against Ryan. I think the improvement is pretty clear that he made he misremembered his lines, and on move 10 he played knight takes d4, and after that he's just in a much worse position. He ended up, his material was even, but his king was very, very bad, very exposed, and Ryan did
Yeah, I
a great
remember
job
that.
of exposing that.
So that's really that critical, huh?
Yeah, I think that basically remembering his lines, not allowing that, uh, what happened in that game, and then the thing is, his mistake was very early in that game. So
Yeah.
even if you don't make that mistake, you're in for a very long chess game against Ryan. But that was the main thing. If he doesn't make that mistake, he has a very playable position, and you go from there.
So instead of knight takes d4, what was the recommendation?
Let's see here. Instead of knight takes d4, he could have played. I mean, he can play bishop g4 or rook e8. Either one works. So he's got options. It's still, I don't know how accurate the Lichess engines is, but it's not that satisfying that it's plus 0.6 before that. So
Mm.
Ryan has a pretty nice position. It looks like, oh, okay, wait. But yeah, I'm not sure you really love that. But I guess most of the Alekines have that type of evaluation anyways, so maybe you're just okay with that.
Yeah, point 0.6 or 60 centipons. That's standard fare for the Aliefin's defense. And the bishop g4 move is really common in Aliefin's defense. The bishop on f5 goes to g4 a lot because it weakens White's control of d4.
Chat pointing out that he's not going to give away his prep, which is probably smart because Chris Ambergy is on the stream, so information could easily get leaked to Ryan.
So Ryan's not going to give anything away either, huh?
Yeah. Well, yeah, Ryan's been on this stream too, but yeah, I don't think that either one of them is going to give away anything too secret. But yeah, General Zod mentioned when he came on our broadcast last night that he mixed up his lines, and unfortunately, Ryan was very good at punishing that mix-up. So a little bit of a tough spot here for David. How can he figure out a way to make this a decisive game? Because we know that's what he's looking for. Do you play bishop d3 or do you just exchange f takes? Is that bishop check productive? I guess is the question. I think bishop d3. The king probably comes back to f6.
I don't know. That's a good question. I think you just trade pawns.
Yeah. Trade here. H takes.
I mean, I think that David could trade pawns, put his bishop on e8 and then h5, play h3, then post the bishop on g4, which puts pressure on the e6 pawn. What's he doing? Oh, he's going to... What is he doing? Pawn takes pawn, bishop check, king to g5, h4 check, king takes, king takes. I don't know that that's that good. What is he doing?
Can if Tom just wants to draw, could he just play g4 here?
No, I wouldn't want to play that g4 move because White can break that up with h3 later, and then it's the black king can't stay with the g4 pawn.
I want to play king to e4. I'm just Uh, the thing I'm thinking about is g4, and the king has to go to e3 because you can't allow king to e4.
So wait a minute. Here, G takes F4, bishop checks, right?
Yeah,
King goes to G5,
correct.
and then what happens?
I feel like you have to play. I feel like you have to play h4 here.
Okay, so then king takes H4, king takes F4, and then what?
Your king has no moves. We can go king to e5 eventually. We can.
Yeah, but so black is going to play bishop C8 and defend the E pawn.
And we can go.
As soon as that king abandons G3, that H4 black's H4 king can go to G3.
I wonder how patient white can be, because you can do things like bishop g6 and bishop f7 for free, and black can't move.
Oh, black can move his bishop on C8 back and forth from D7 to C6 and just say, do something.
Well, we can play like b4, a4, b5, and then I guess maybe that's not a good idea. That doesn't get anywhere, actually.
Well, David may have something I just can't envision yet.
The engine loves this line. It says it's plus 3.3, but I don't understand why.
Oh, he says that black's lost here?
I wonder if it's because maybe there's a
Oh, a checkmate with bishop to G6 and pawn to G3?
Or maybe not even a checkmate, just forcing the king to go off sides. Because after pawn to G3, the king has to come to H3. Then you can play bishop to H5, and then threaten king to or bishop to G4.
I see what you mean, because then your bishop can sit on G4 and defend the remaining pawn.
I think you can, you can force the black king to get behind these pawns, and then that allows the white king to just take control of the game. And I think you eventually win the H pawn.
And C7, and yeah.
And once you win the H pawn, you launch the G pawn and win the game, because the bishop will just
really interesting.
Have to sacrifice itself. But Tom has not committed to pawn takes F4. Pawn takes F4 apparently loses the game. And according to the engine, G4 is drawish.
Wow. I mean, to me, G4, King G3, then you're going to play bishop to E2, H5 is happening, and then pawn to H3. And
I feel like on G4, you need to go king to E3, because you don't want to allow king to E4. I will want to win that G4 pawn.
I guess you're right. It takes too many tempi to get your kingside pawns moving, and that D pawn is just 5 moves away.
And after king E3, I mean, I'm thinking that maybe we can get H5, No, apparently I lost the game there.
I don't know. This is kind of interesting. If pawn to G4 check and king to G3, and now if king to E4, there's bishop to D7, and then if king takes on D4, bishop takes on E6, and now potentially white could give up his bishop for the remaining passed pawn, D pawn, sometime in the future. If white could get a pawn roller going on the king side. Now that's just conceptual, so that doesn't mean it works. But I'm like you, if G4 check, king E3, I mean, that doesn't look... Oh, let's see, I guess you're going to do the same line with you're going to check the king away, then play H3.
So you're right that king takes D4 just loses. after bishop takes e6, but apparently you can just hang on on f5 and play this kind of passively. This is going to be very hard for Tom to figure out, though, because it's the way to.
Well, that's interesting. He's just waiting.
Yeah, the way to do this for Tom is to just sit and wait, which is going to be very hard to do. He played bishop to c8, which I think is kind of the right idea, but the wrong execution. Because now white can play g4 check and force the king backwards, though I don't see what necessarily we are accomplishing there. Maybe g4 is too committal, though.
Well, I'm kind of interested in g4 check. If king f6, which is maybe the wrong square, you might play h4. Sacrifice that h4 pawn, then king g2 to h3 wins it back.
Yeah, that would. The only thing that I worry about like the g4 h4 pushes is, does he ever take on e5? Like after you play on, I mean f5. After you play g4, you can take on f5.
No, you don't. So g4 check, king goes, I guess, f6, then h4. Now what?
g4 and then h4. I was wondering if we could take on f4, but apparently taking on h4 is better. This is all completely winning for white. Apparently. Wow. Though it's unclear to me the knockout. These are hard. Yes. Dome re Zod went 4 out of 5.
So the winning concept for white is to get a passed pawn on the outside, on the king side, and then that gives you control of e5, and then you get your king into d6 and maybe bishop d7, and those remaining pawns just are too weak, and the black king is too far away to help.
Yeah, this is starting to look good for David.
Yeah, David's not going to quit this endgame. He is not a player to accept a draw and say, okay, well, third place, I'm going to go watch the Thunder game. It's not that at all. He is going to keep playing chess.
If they had the Thunder game on in the venue somewhere, which they could have easily had, they're playing in like an activity room. The Thunder are up by 31 points right now, so it's not a particularly exciting game to watch. Maybe their exciting games will be later in the playoffs.
You know, most people enjoy when their team is crushing the other people, and they still want to watch it.
Yeah, I went to Alabama, and when I was a student, they won the national title in 3 of the 4 years I was there. I was there from 2009 to 2012. And I was bored whenever we would play somebody like North Texas, and then we would win by 50-something points. And like even some of their SEC games, they would win by 30-plus points, and it's just like, I don't know. G3 by David here.
You know, I think North Texas has a good team now.
Yeah, they're probably better than when Alabama was beating them by 50-something points. Because I do believe that they were one of the better teams out of the group of 5 last year.
Yeah.
But G3, and according to the engine, has thrown away all of David's advantage.
Oh no, David.
You can play G4 and then basically just sit.
Not that I don't want Tom to lose. I'm just,
You're rooting for decisive chess.
Oh, it just seems like he fought so hard out of that bad opening, and got this winning position, and it just seems a shame. Wow. But still, he's not going to lose this in game, and that means he's going to get third place, right?
If he draws, he will get third. Yes. We've got out of the people who are complete with their games, we know that Ryan has 5 points, Josh has 4 points, and Arya has a half a point, and Chuck has 1 point. So right now, entering this game, Tom had 1.5 and David had 2. So a draw would put him a half a point ahead, or would leave him a half a point ahead of Tom for third.
I think David can still play H4.
Yeah, I think H4 makes sense here. It's interesting that the engine says G4.
Okay.
But if you were going to play G4, you would have played it last move. Let's face it. So David's thinking about... I mean, from a theoretical standpoint, what David is doing makes a lot of sense. You're putting your pawns on dark squares. And when both sides have a light square bishop, that's generally what you want to do. That being said, the position of Tom's light square bishop is not in position to attack any pawns at the moment. I do like H4 as a try, though.
So if F takes on G5 check, what should Tom do?
If F takes, I feel like H takes.
And then what if H4?
Yeah, H4. Can we get away with taking, or is just that pass pawn going to be too Okay, that pass pawn is going to be too problematic. So he has to kind of sit.
He played B4.
Back to live, B4.
Oh, I guess he's going to play bishop C6 and then B5, huh? I don't know that necessary.
Yeah, B4 feels like kind of a waiting move. We might see here from Tom simply A5, and getting those pawns off of the board probably doesn't hurt.
Yeah, that would be helpful for black.
Have Ayla asking how many points will General Zod get from this tournament. So at the beginning of this tournament, he was 21.58. And from my calculations based on the website that I went to, it looks like he will gain 37 points and reach 21.95.
So close.
Yeah. But the good news is this isn't the last chess tournament for Josh. And that means his next chess tournament, he will be only 5 points away, which is not a huge ask. Just have a slightly good tournament and reach master.
So I like this little deal. If F takes it, well, he played B4, but if he played F takes it G5 check, King takes it G5, H4 check. If Tom then goes King to H5, that's a helpmate. Bishop E8 mate.
That's cute. So I'll waste a move to show that on the board. But if we get to this position here, you can't play King to H5 because this is mate. Of course, after H4, Tom is never playing King H5, but it's nice to have a fantasy line every once in a while.
But what that means is that White can get pawns on G4 and H4, get his King to F4, and get this outside passed pawn with pawn to G5 check.
Yeah. I feel like Tom's probably going to play A5 here. It's just the instinctual thing to do. If I see my opponent play B4, I'm just going to play A5.
What about A6? Oh no, Tom just played King G6, huh? All right, David. F takes G5.
Yeah, he can go for that. It's just amazing to me, just looking at the engine for some of these endings, how it goes from David's completely winning to it's drawn, to David's completely winning to it's drawn, and the differences are just so minute.
One tempo. He might play Bishop E8 check, King F6, and then B5, just to cramp.
Yeah,
Not that it really changes the fundamental character of the ending.
he certainly could. So we see the exchange, and the engine says H takes G5 is the only way to maintain equality.
Equality?
Well, a slightly advantage for, like, it says plus 0.3, which is, I consider that equality in an ending like this.
Why is that? I don't know. I guess I don't understand why White doesn't just win control of the E5 square now.
H4, interesting. It basically wants Tom to let the tension sit there. It does not want him to exchange. It wants a King F6, King F5, or an A5 type of idea here.
I see. So the idea here is that if David gets in pawn to H5, he can't play King to G4 after that because of the E5 check move.
Correct.
But it would still seem to me that maybe Bishop to E8 check, if King F6, Bishop to H5, and then the bishop can come to G4. And
yeah, I think that David definitely has quite a bit of opportunity to press here.
yeah, I think that B4 move might have hurt him because it takes a square away from the king.
It takes away kind of an option, because if we get A5 on the board here, we're trimming some pawns, which is probably a good thing if you're wanting to draw the game.
So if David moves his bishop to H3 and G4 and pushes his H pawn, Tom is going to have to sit on that H pawn with King H6. And then that frees up White's king to go to the queen side. Question would be, is there a breakthrough over there? And I'm kind of thinking that pawn on B4 makes it harder to break through.
Yeah. It eliminates the king squares for sure. Because you can just do something. You could maybe even shore up like an A6 at some point, which is somewhat cringy. But
okay, so bishop E8 check makes more sense. And then pawn to H5 maybe after that.
Can Tom resist and be patient and play a move like King F6 or King F5 and just kind of sit on the position is really the question of this position. Because if
I think that's the question, is whether the H pawn can cause enough distraction.
The challenge for Tom is the way to draw this is to just sit. And that can be a very difficult thing to do as a chess player who wants to be a little bit more proactive in the position and wants to be doing things.
I think Tom's probably got that figured out. Bishop E8 check King F6. Pawn takes, pawn check, king takes. And then maybe g4. And here's the deal. The bishop on c8 doesn't have d7. But if it moves away from the diagonal, bishop to d7 will cause the king to want to come back to f6, giving up the f4 square. And then you have that extra outside pawn to distract the king later and hop king to e5 in. So I don't see how it's drawable myself. Learn something about this in game. I used to think that masters needed to know all in games like this cold. But then I read an article by Grandmaster Paul Banco, and he said, these endings are not simple. You need to study them. Doesn't matter if you're a grandmaster or a master or expert or non-expert.
I think we've all seen Magnus Carlsen and other GMs just really be able to milk out some of these endings which are theoretically drawn, and they win them against grandmasters, some of the top players in the world. You see 2700s lose positions like what Tom has here, where the engine says all zeros, but that's assuming perfect play. And
there may be horizon effect in there, possibly. I don't know. I mean, if it's using table bases, then probably not.
Well, I don't know how good the engine is on Lichess either. I'm not sure if that's necessarily the
I think
gold
it's Stockfish
standard.
18.
Okay.
Stockfish 18 is pretty good. That doesn't mean it doesn't have a horizon effect, because you'll play along in one of its lines and its evaluations begin to change.
But we've been on this position for a while, and it says at Stockfish 18, depth 30, that this is all zeros.
Wow.
And after King H6, it now says plus 3.4. Yeah.
Now it's winning.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is not like that.
Bishop E8. Oh, Bishop E8 is unpleasant, huh? Because then he doesn't have the light squares to go to. Yeah. And if he moves the bishop away from
Bishop
C8,
E8 is on the board, and I think the problem is now we're forcing G takes H4, which we had already determined was lost.
Yeah. Then that F4, King F4, King E5. How about that? Tom just didn't quite. What was the answer? Was it supposed to be King F6?
King F6 or King F5. He just needed to keep the king on that side of the board. So he moved it to the wrong side of the board. But I think he moved it to the wrong side of the board because he was probably afraid of H5, which is a logical thing to be afraid of.
Absolutely.
But
the presence of that pawn on G5, though, means that White's king can only approach by going to G4, which immediately allows pawn to E5 check. Unless you can tempo the bishop away from C8. And that's the part I'm still a little murky on. Why White isn't able to do that. Of course, now it looks like he's just tempoed. So if the bishop on C8 were to move, say bishop A6, I'm thinking bishop to D7 just wins material.
Maybe bishop C7, bishop D7 either way. And yeah, it wins the pawn. And eventually that would win the game. Though after bishop C5, that does force the A pawn to move. But you can't hold that pawn on E6. So yeah, after bishop to e8, this is a very tough problem for Tom to solve. I think he's going to play g takes h4, um, just because there's not many other moves.
Yeah, pawn to g4 check. David's not going to take it.
He can.
He's going to play king f4.
He can try something like a5 to try to be more of a waiting move, and then see if maybe he can provoke h takes g5. I doubt that he can. But that might be his best chance, is to play a waiting move like a5 here. Will Zod get a title after this? Nah, it looks like he's going to be 5 points short of the National Master title if our calculations, according to the website, are correct.
No, I think black is in Zugzwang. If you push that a pawn, David will just take it and play a4, block the position. Once again, it's black's move. And
the engine line is cruel. It says bishop to a6, b5, bishop back to c8. And the main idea is that you can play something like a3 and just wait.
It's Zugzwang again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it's been a long tournament for Tom, and a long game defending against Ryan, and you get tired. But having said that, David played this in Karpov style. He got that French defense position with control of e5, and he's just increased his advantage.
I thought that we weren't concerned about that French bishop. I thought that we weren't concerned about that French bishop. It would develop itself anyways.
Oh, no, I was not thinking of the bishop. I was thinking of the e6 and d5 pawns with the e5 square.
All right. People asking in the chat for the games. The games are right here.
Where's Dandy Don Meredith? I need Joe Veal does a good Don Meredith impression, by the way, when he sings "The Party's Over."
E5 is on the board, which I feel like is kind of a last-ditch desperation attempt from Tom.
Yeah,
it just doesn't work. Isabella says that he should gain about 30 points from these games. And we gave him 37 points based on the rating calculator I found. I don't know what all is accurate, because you've got some things like in the USCF with bonus points that he might be getting close to triggering. So I'm unsure. And the 2100s are on the, the 3/4 scale, I believe, for rating. So they don't gain points as quickly as some others. But we think that he's going to be at 2195. If he wins 30 points, that would put him at 2188. Either way, he's one good event from National Master from this point.
Miles, if you'll notice, the black king is in a box. It cannot move to g6, g5, or h5. It cannot approach that h4 pawn. That means that white can just move his king over to d4, and then move bishop to c6, take the pawn, and that e pawn is going to be a queen.
Yeah, I think that is definitely a good approach to just win this without too much of a sweat. One idea here is, well, it's black's move in the live position, but it's annoying for black because they have to move, and they don't have many good moves. I think A3, the move that David just played, was very nice. Solid prophylactic waiting move, putting your last pawn on a dark square, and don't have anything to worry about. A5 will not accomplish anything. You could ignore it. You can play king E3. You can take. You can do whatever you want. King E3 on the board. It looks like David might be going with the idea that you just stated in chat of the king D4, bishop C6, and bishop D5 line, which I feel wins the game. And we might be...
Miles, we've done this great job of commentating on all this tournament. I'm just wondering if we could get you to sing the Party's Over song.
I don't even know the song.
The party's over. No.
Yeah, I'm not much for the karaoke.
Oh, and there's another one. Turn out the lights, the party's over. They say that all good things must end. See why I was trying to get you to sing?
It sounds like you've got it covered. I mean, I'm not stopping you.
Oh, wow. Well, it's been a fun tournament. Lots of work.
Yeah, we've had some good games. I really enjoyed the, David Luscombe versus Chuck Udrew, that absolutely crazy game from last night, where you had at one point a material imbalance of 2 rooks and a bishop for a queen and 5 pawns, which is not something you see every day. That was a fun game. And we had a couple of close calls for Ryan, but he was in control most of the way and never was really worse.
Yeah, he just played a great tournament. Was he in trouble against Chuck Unruh?
So the engine had Chuck at like +1, in like the opening. Really thought that Ryan didn't play the opening particularly great, but Chuck did not really press an advantage out of that and was kind of felt like playing for a draw at some point when he might have been should have been a little bit more aggressive and pressing a little bit more. And then
Chuck is a strong positional player. He likes to play within the strategic aims of the opening and the position. And certainly it's done well for him his whole career. Other people like fireworks, and sometimes they backfire on you.
And we have a final.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
That's it.
David has won. He will finish this tournament on 3 points out of 5. A super, I would say, solid result. Great tournament for Ryan. A good tournament. Really a great tournament for General Zod as well.
That's right.
A solid outing from David. And everyone else, it was a tough field. Let's just put it that way. But I'll go over these last 2 games very, very quickly for the Twitch chat. We will, let's see, look first over this game here. We had a Sicilian by Tom Bromlich and David Luscombe, and an early F5. Thought it was somewhat interesting, not something I see a lot. Got the queen out early. I thought that the bishop b4 move gave Tom a really good position. We see with the black pieces, he's already -1 on move 10, so Tom came out of the gate with a really nice position. But
so this bishop b4 check, what did the computer say was the best answer?
on which move?
Bishop b4 check on move 10.
So on move 10, the bishop b4, it thought king d1 was the best move.
Oh, wow.
So it thought that David found the best move, which was a hard move to play.
So the queen a4 move was not so hot.
Yeah. It wanted to play either queen to d3 or queen to d1.
Okay, I thought queen d3 was the move.
Yeah, queen d3 reminds me a lot of some of the modern day Scandinavians, where you take and they go to queen to d6 in those lines.
Yep.
But yeah,
it's analogous.
So the king d1.
So then c3 and then bishop d3 on move 13.
Yeah, it feels like the move that lost Tom's advantage was he needed to play d5, as we were mentioning on move 13. And on knight e5, after knight takes, queen takes, this position is now considered equal after f3, which is what David played.
Then Feingold is holding his head.
Yeah, he is. Queen h4, h6. They hang out here for a while with a little bit of equality. The engine didn't like the queens coming off from Tom's perspective, thought that it was slightly advantageous for David. But this maneuver here with the bishops getting traded on d4 gave David just a little bit more extra. And it feels like the idea of rook f4 really did not help Tom out either. So he gets into a worse ending.
That just had a time-wasting look to it. You know, Capablanca said in an endgame, any maneuver that saves time should be seriously considered. And since you lose time with rook f4, you seriously consider not doing it.
And we just saw most of this ending very recently, but king h6 was the point of no return. After h4, it's very hard ending to hold. He needs to be on f5 or king f5 or f6. Unfortunately, Tom is not an engine, and after bishop to e8, there is simply no way forward for Tom to find a way to make this decisive. And we haven't gone over General Zod's game yet. We'll have that to be the finale. e4, d6. Here we have a perk, which, basically transformed itself into a closed Sicilian type of game, which I think both players were comfortable for, and we were somewhat even early on. The early f5 push by General Zod opens the position up. And here, knight d4 apparently was a very big mistake by Chuck. He needed to not waste time. Now after knight h5, white is just a lot better here. And Chuck tries to do everything he can to defend, but man, that bishop coming into h6, we're not allowing any castling. And the rook coming down to a7, rook to e1. This was just very, very nicely played by the general here. A little bit of a slight inaccuracy, allowing knight takes a7, but not going for that with f6. Queen h5, a move that I suggested, also an inaccuracy, but queen to e7, also an inaccuracy. A hard position to play for both sides. Queen takes h7, and around here, the general's just like, I can get into an ending that I know is favorable for me, and he elects to take all of the pieces off of the board, and gets into that ending. I thought that Chuck might have some tricks up his sleeve, but it turns out that he did not have any tricks. He allowed the king to f4, And after the king gets to f4, there is simply nothing here. And after bishop to h3...
I think General Zod knew when he traded those queens that endgame was won.
Yeah. It ended up being 1, and he ended up with 4 out of 5. So that is going to conclude the broadcast. Thank you to everyone who tuned in over the past 3 days. I enjoyed broadcasting these games. I enjoyed having the various co-hosts I had on stream, including Mark Halsey, who is on the phone right now. Thanks to all the viewers who tuned in and chatted with us along the way. And I hope you all have a great day. Mark, you get the last word. Do you have any inspiration for the chatters?
Thank you, Miles. Keep watching General Zod. He knows what he's doing.
All right. Keep watching this channel is the final word. And I will end the stream. Good night, everybody.